Masechet Baba Kama Daf Kof Yod Bet. We're in the middle of the subject of whether a thief who steals something, do his children have to pay it back? We already saw several opinions about this. We're about to quote 3 different baraitot about it. The third baraita is actually going to be a summary of the first 2 baraitot, so they all work together. Tenora banan, hagozel ma'achilet banav peturin mileshalem, heniach lifnehem gedolim chayavin leshalem, ketanim peturim mileshalem, ve'im amru gedolim en anu yod'im cheshbonot shechishev abinu mecha peturin. Someone who steals some food and he gives it to his children to eat. The children do not have to pay it back because the item doesn't exist anymore. However, if it does exist and he died, the robber died, and he left this stuff, whatever he stole, as an inheritance. If they are adult children, they have to pay. If they are minor children, they don't have to pay. However, if they were adults and they said, well, we don't know about the calculations of our father, that what he made with you, maybe he paid you back, maybe he settled it with you, so we don't know, we cannot verify that he owes you the money, then they do not have to pay. We ask about this. Mishum damre enan yodin peturin. Wait, just because they're adults and they say we don't know, they don't have to pay. That means the victim of the robbery says, I know for sure, and that's a vadai, and they're just saying, well, yeah, we agree that he stole from you, but we don't know, maybe he paid you back. Is that sufficient for them to just be off the hook? Amar Rava Kamar Gedolim Shamru Yodim Anu Cheshbonot Shechishev Abinu Mecha Velo Pashlach Gabe Vela Midi Peturin. Rava actually interprets the baraita the opposite of what it seems to mean. He seems to just put a rhetorical question mark at the end, right? Do we not know the calculations that our father made with you? We do know the calculations, and he does not owe you anything, right? He settled everything, all the matters with you. That's when, if they know that for sure, then they do not have to pay. All right, that's one baraita. Tanya idach, another baraita. Gozel ma'achil bana peturim mileshalem. The beginning is the same. Someone who steals and feeds what he stole to his children while he's alive, the children do not have to pay. However, if the father died and then the heirs ate the item that he stole, whether they are adults or children, they have to pay it back. We ask, do the children really have to pay it back? This means they're paying back from their own pocket or from the inheritance, because the item is gone, because they ate the item. Now, why should children have to pay? Even if the children, you consider them as damagers, if a child goes into someone's property, causes damage, eats something, they don't have to pay because they're a minor. A minor who causes damage doesn't have to pay. So why would they have to pay in this case? Here also, we have to change around the wording. That doesn't mean that they inherited and ate it, but rather the opposite. If they inherited and have not yet eaten it, if it's still intact in existence, then whether they're adults or children, they have to give it back. The item is here itself, right? This belongs to somebody else. He never gave up on it, so he has to get it back. Maybe even if he did give up on it. Okay. Yesterday we talked about Yeush, Lifnei Yeush, or after Yeush. Did the owner despair or not? It's not easy to reconcile these 2 baraitot with all the opinions that we mentioned yesterday about whether these are all before Yeush or after Yeush. But anyway, the Gemara does not bring that up, and there seems to be a lot of different opinions, and these baraitot don't necessarily have to agree with the baraitot and opinions of the Amoraim that we saw on the previous daf. Amar Rava, hiniach lehem avihem para she'ula, mishtamishim ba kol yemei she'elata, meta en chayavin be'ona se'ah. Rava adds another related law about children being responsible for things that happen that as a result of inheriting something from their father. If the father borrowed a cow in his lifetime and then he died, and the cow, let's say the cow was borrowed for 1 year, and the father dies 6 months into the year, so his children can use the cow until the end of that period for another 6 months. If it dies meta because of honest, they didn't kill it, it dies on its own, and hayavin be'onaseha, they do not have to pay. Normally, a borrower would have to pay, but that only applies to the father himself, but does not apply to the children who inherit it, so they do not have to pay. However, if they do kill it, meaning that it's not just that it died on its own, but they didn't know that they thought it was the father's. They didn't know that it was a borrowed cow. And so they slaughtered it and ate it. In that case, they did benefit from it, right? They ate the meat, they had a good barbecue, but they only have to pay back the value of inexpensive meat. Because if they knew, it could be that if they knew it was expensive, then they wouldn't have killed it, because it wouldn't have been worth it. But since they did benefit and eat meat, so then certainly they should pay at least the value of cheap meat that they did benefit from. The last clause, we're going to ask if it refers to the Resha or the Sefa, but here it says, if the father left them land, then they do have to pay, right? And so pay in full. Now, some say that this last line of Rava said all three of these lines, but some say that the last one, that he has to pay from the land if the heirs inherited land, that applies to the first case where the father had this cow that he borrowed, and then the sons are using it, which they're allowed to use, and it dies on its own. That's where, if there is land, then they have to pay. But others say no, it applies to the sefa, which is when the father never told the sons that the cow doesn't belong to them, and so they unknowingly slaughtered it and killed it. See, in that case, the father actually did something wrong by not informing the children that it doesn't belong to them. So their liability already occurs in the time of the father for being negligent for not informing the children. So in that case, it makes sense that there would be a lien on the father's property. Since the father already did something wrong, there would be a lien on his property. So now, what's the difference between these two? Someone who says that one has to pay in the first scenario from the father's land would agree all the more so in the second scenario, because in the first scenario, the father didn't do anything wrong. Well, I mean, he just borrowed a cow and he died. And yet, if you say in that case that the heirs nevertheless pay from the father's property, from the father's land, then all the more so when the father was negligent and didn't tell the kids that this doesn't belong to him, that a lien would be created during the father's lifetime, and then therefore the kids would have to pay from the land. Now, if you say it that way, this will be against Rav Papa. We'll see what Rav Papa says in a minute. Someone who applies it only to the second case would say, no, only in the second case where the father didn't tell them and was negligent, that's where the sons have to pay from the lien that was on the father's land, because the father was negligent and created a lien in the first place. However, in the first case where it died, while the kids were using it as borrowers, and they were allowed to use it as borrowers, in that case, he would not have to pay, because no lien was created during the father's lifetime, and this would be consistent with Rav Papa's opinion. We're about to quote Rav Papa's opinion, but it's worth explaining it now, before we see the more complicated case that Rav Papa says it about. Rav Papa thinks that when someone borrows something, he has to pay it back, obviously, but he's not owed. It doesn't create a lien until if and when it dies. So if let's say the father's alive, so he borrows a cow. Okay, he has to give back the cow, but there's no lien. And then if it should die on the father's watch, then the father, as a borrower, would have to pay, and that would create a lien. But the lien is only created, right? That obligation to pay is only created once it dies. Therefore, while the father was alive, there was no lien on the land, because the cow was still alive. He just has to give it back. When it dies, when the sons are around, the sons themselves don't have to pay because they're not liable as borrowers, since they're not the original borrowers. And since there was never a lien on the land in the father's lifetime, they inherited the land free and clear. It doesn't create a lien on their property because they don't even have to pay it at all. And so that's the opinion of Rav Papa. Rav Papa thinks that there is no lien on land at the time of borrowing, but only at the time of the death of the animal if the father was alive. And therefore, Rav Papa does not think that one has to pay in the Resha. And that's why it says here, if you apply it to the Resha, well, that would be against Rav Papa, whereas if you apply it only to the Sefa and the Resha, there is no lien, then that is consistent with Rav Papa. Let's see what he said. Abdema Rav Papa, Hayta para genuva lo utvacha b'Shabbat hayav, shekevad hayav begeneva kodem sheyavo lidei isur Shabbat. Someone stole a cow and before Shabbat, and he slaughtered it on Shabbat. He is liable, right? Because he was already liable due to the stealing it before it came to the prohibition of Shabbat. In other words, normally we have a rule: kim le you can't be liable to death penalty and to monetary punishment for one act. However, for a fine, that where Rav Papa is following the opinion that for a fine, one can be liable to both. So in this case, since he stole it, and so now he's already liable to pay double for it, and then when he slaughters it, that's going to add 2 or 3 more times of the value of what he stole. And even though he did that on Shabbat, and he is liable to capital punishment, nevertheless, he still has to pay because it's a fine. Okay, the more relevant case is the second one. Hayta parashula lo utvacha beShabbat patur sheisur Shabbat veisur geneva ba'in kehad. If he borrowed a cow and then he slaughtered it on Shabbat, he does not pay. Now, this case is not the same as the first one because there's no fines. A borrower does not pay double or 4 or 5. He just pays the principal. So the idea here is that when he kills it on Shabbat, he does not have to pay because the prohibition of Shabbat and the prohibition of stealing come at the same time. Now, this is the point, that they come at the same time. We do not say that the liability to pay for an ox starts at the time of borrowing. You could say that, right? Because the second I borrow your ox, I owe you the value of the ox, and either I give back the ox or I give back the value. And so since I'm liable to that from beforehand, from the moment of borrowing, which happened on Friday or Thursday or a month ago, so then when he slaughters it on Shabbat, that is not at the same time. So we don't say that, but rather we say, no, there's no lien. I don't owe you anything at the time of the borrowing, except that I have to return it, but I don't owe you any money. And therefore, at the time of slaughter, that's when that monetary liability kicks in, but that's at the same time that there's a liability for capital punishment. And so here we see here that according to Rava, the liability to pay only happens at the time of death. Therefore, in that case above, while the father was alive, the animal was still alive, so there was no liability to pay, no lien on the land. Only after the father died, and then the sons had it and were using it, and it died, the sons are not liable for ones, and therefore they don't have to pay, and there's no lien from that they inherited from the father, and therefore they don't have to pay according to Rav Papa. Tenora Banan. And now we have the third baraita that's going to combine the opinions of the two above, and we're going to see that the first baraita that we quoted is actually the opinion of Sumchus, and the second baraita is the Tanakama here. Right, you have to return the stolen item that you stole. These are extra words. Why do you have to say that he stole? Chayavin. So we can derive from here that someone who steals something and feeds it to his children, and then it's no longer around, he does not have to pay, right? He only has to pay what he robbed, but if it's gone, then he doesn't have to pay anymore. Assuming that the owners had Yeush, right? That was part of the discussion yesterday. However, if the father died and left it for them, then whether they are adults or children, they have to pay, right? It's because the item is still there. So as long as the item is intact, they have to pay it back. However, Mishum Sumchus says, no, that only applies if they're adults. If they're minors, you don't have to, because minors, you never take to court. Minors, no matter what they do not have to pay, so it doesn't apply to them. Okay, now this opinion of Sumchus is going to be relevant in the following fascinating story. Bar Hamud Rabbi Yirmiyah, Tadak Galeh Ba'apeh Rabbi Yirmiyah, Ata Lekameh Rabbi Abin. You have the son of Rabbi Yirmiyah's father-in-law. In other words, his wife's brother was a minor. So we have Rabbi Yirmiyah had a brother-in-law who was a minor, and Rabbi Yirmiyah's father-in-law died, leaving an inheritance to this minor son-in-law. Now, Rabbi Yirmiyah wanted to go and get the property of the father-in-law that died, because he's going to claim that it belongs to him, that the father-in-law gave it to him during his lifetime. So Rabbi Yirmiyah came to collect it, and the minor son-in-law shut the door in his face, either literally or figuratively. A point as he said, no, you cannot come in and take this. It doesn't belong to you, right? This is mine. It's my inheritance. So Rabbi Yirmiyah went to Rabbi Avin to make a claim and said, this is mine. Rabbi Avin Amar Shelo Tobea. Rabbi Avin said to Rabbi Yirmiyah, no, your minor brother-in-law is claiming what's his, right? The father died. As far as we know, the minor son should be the one who inherits. So you have no claim. Rabbi Yirmiyah says, I have witnesses that can testify that the father gave it to me and I took possession of it during the father's lifetime. And so it is mine, and I have proof. So that sounds like he's right. Amarle, Rabbi Abin said, can we accept witnesses not in front of the other litigant? That's a rule. Whenever you have a court case, you have to have both litigants present. And then you can adjudicate. You can't call witnesses when only one side is present. And this kid is a minor, and even if he is in court, doesn't have dot, he doesn't have the mental capacity to represent himself. And therefore, you cannot bring your witnesses. He can't come to court till he grows up. So you have to wait a few years till he grows up, and then you can bring your witnesses. In the meantime, we assume that it's his, and you can't have it. So now we ask, Velo, is that true that you can never bring witnesses against a minor? V'hakatani ben gedolim ben ketanim hayavin. In the Braita just above, it says that whether they are adults or children, if they inherit some stolen property, we do take it from them. So that means that someone is coming and claiming, hey, I'm a victim, your father stole from me, right? And that's my item. And we take it from him, and we don't say that you can't take something from a minor because they can't represent themselves in court. Amarle hare machloket sumachus besidecha. Rabbi Abin said to Rabbi Yirmiyah, well, you quoted Tanakama, however, there's another opinion, the opinion of Sumchus, that says that you can only adults pay, but the minor, the father stole something, and now the kids are minors, we do not take it from them. So I'm going to follow Sumchus, and you cannot have it. Rabbi Yirmiyah retorted, Amar ichbal kula alma v'ka'e kesumchus lafku'an lididi. He says, what? You did the whole world go to the effort to follow the opinion of Sumchus just to take what's mine? In other words, why are you all of a sudden following Sumchus against the Tanakama, against the majority opinion? Right? My side, majority supports me. The majority opinion above said that even minors, their father stole something and the item is still there, they have to give it back. So yes, we take something from minors and give it to the rightful owner, and I am the rightful owner of this land. I have witnesses, and so I should be able to take it from my brother-in-law. who, even though he's a minor. And just because you have sumchus, all of a sudden, did everybody in the world just now decide to vote like sumchus, that now he's the majority, and you're going to do all that? You're going to follow sumchus just to take away my property, right? You're going to change the whole law just to keep me from getting what's rightfully mine. All right, so they're having this argument. In the meantime, adachi igalgal milta ata umta lekamed Rabbi Abu. So they continued arguing until the matter rose up and went to Rabbi Abu to adjudicate. Amar lashmi alechu had Rav Yosef bar Chama amar Rabbi Yoshaya amar Rav Yosef bar Chama amar Rabbi Yoshia tinok shetaka ba'avada v'ira letoch sadeh shel chavero v'amar shelihu en omrim namtin ad sheyagdil ela mosin miyado miyad ul sheyagdil yabi adim v'nir'eh. So Rabbi Abu takes the side of Rabbi Yirmiyah, and he says to Rabbi Abin, have you never heard of what the statement of Rav Yosef bar Chama and name of Rabbi Yoshia, who said that if a child goes and grabs someone's slave, or he goes into someone's field and takes something from his field, and the child said, this is mine. So we don't say, oh, well, he's a child, we can't bring him to court. We have to wait till he grows up, and only then we can go and take it from him. No, we don't say that. This kid's a thief, right? We go and take it from him right away. And then, when he grows up, then he can bring witnesses. The burden of proof is on the child, because, right, we saw that he just took it. If he thinks that he has a right to take this because of some other thing that happened, that someone owes him money from before and he has witnesses, fine. But otherwise, we take it from the child, because that's, as far as we know, the kid just stole it. And therefore, Rabbi Abin, you should side with Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rabbi Yirmiyah has proof that it's his, and so therefore, he has a right to go and grab it, take it from the minors and his minor brother-in-law. When his minor brother-in-law grows up, he can bring counter witnesses and adjudicate it. So why don't you follow that way? And we, however, reject that comparison. Midame hatamhu demapikinan mine de la kaimale achazaka de abu aval hechadit achazaka de abu la. In the case of Rabbi Yoshaya, we're going to take it away from the child because he has no chazakah. He has no presumption of ownership from his father. He didn't inherit from his father. We know that he went and took it, claiming that it's his. A claim based on what? Since he has no prior presumption, we do not let him keep it. However, in the case of Rabbi Yirmiyah and his brother-in-law, where the father died, and the presumption is that this is an heir until, unless we know otherwise. So since he has the presumption, it's more like a mosim echavero lavaraya. You're going to take it from an heir? Well, you have to prove it. You have witnesses? Excellent. Hold on to those witnesses. Make sure that they stick around until the minor grows up, and then you could bring him to court. But otherwise, we're going to leave the item where it is, and so the Rabbi Yirmiyah was not able to take the land from his minor brother-in-law. Since we mentioned the topic of bringing a court case without the other litigant present, we're going to go into a longer discussion about that law. Amar Rav Asher amar Rabbi Shabbatai bekabelin adim shelo bifnei ba'al din. Rav Asher says the name of Rav Shabbatai that one can accept witnesses even without the other side present. Tahi ba Rabbi Yochanan v'chi mekabelin edin shelo b'fnei ba'al din. Rabbi Yochanan wondered about this. He exclaimed, really? Can you accept witnesses without the other side present? You can't just hear one side of a case without the other. They should have a chance to defend themselves. Maybe they have other witnesses. Maybe they're going to call edim zomemin. Maybe they have another defense. That wouldn't be fair. קיבלה מיני רבי יוסי בר חנינא, כגון שהיה הוא חולה או עדיו חולים, או שהיו עדיו מקשים ללכת למדינת הים, ושלחו לו ולא בא. So Rabbi Yosei bar Chanina explained that when Rabbi Shabbatai said that you can accept witnesses without the other litigant, it was only talking about a specific circumstance when either the plaintiff was sick and maybe he's going to die, or the witnesses are sick and we don't know if they're going to be around much longer, or they need to go and travel overseas and then they won't be around to testify, and they called in the litigant, the defendant, and he didn't come. So they did everything they can, and they can't wait any longer because the opportunity to hear the witnesses may not last. And so in that case, you can hear the testimony of witnesses without the other guy. He should make sure to come. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shemuel, Mekabelin Edim Shelo Bifnei Ba'al Din. Now Shemuel also said the same law, that you can accept witnesses without the other litigant. Amar Mor Ukva Ledidim Meparshali Mineh de Shmuel Kegon. תפתחו לה בדיני ושלחו לה ולעתה, אבל לא פתחו לה בדיני מעשה אמר לה, אנא לבית דין הגדול אזיל נא. Mordechai says, he explained it to me himself, that it's not talking about in any case. In a regular case, both litigants have to be present in order for anyone to present their case and to bring witnesses. However, Shemuel was talking about a case where they already opened up a case in a certain Bet Din, and the Bet Din sent for him a summons, right, to come to court, right? You're being sued, come defend yourself, and he decided not to come. However, if they haven't yet opened a case in a specific court, then the defendant may say, I didn't come to your court because I didn't agree to come to this court. I want to go to the Bet Din Hagadol. I want the one that's greater authority. And therefore, since he has a right to say that, so we can't, just because he didn't show up to this Bet Din, doesn't mean he's absentee, refusing, and therefore that we can penalize him by hearing the witnesses without him. Okay, so you see what's common about both of these explanations, that the main thing is that the defendant doesn't come. The first one had the added pressure that someone was sick, and so they need to do it right away. Otherwise, maybe they could wait a little longer. Okay, we ask about this. Wait a second. Now, what's the difference if they opened the case in this court or not? Even if they opened the case in this court, the defendant can say, "Oh no, I don't want to go to this court. I want to go to Bet Din Hagadol," and he would have a right to do that. So Ravina explains, it's when the local court got a license from the Bet Din Hagadol. Bet Din Hagadol doesn't have to hear every case that comes to them themselves. They can appoint a lower court to say, listen, you be our representatives, and you have our stamp of approval. And in that case, the lower court is already has the status of the higher court. And so in that case, the defendant would not be able to say, I want to go to a higher court. This is already it. They already have a license, and therefore it's his responsibility to show up. If he doesn't show up, then the court can hear the witnesses without him. Amar Rav, mekaymin את השטר שלא בפני בעל דין, ורבי יוחנן אמר אין מקייmin את השטר שלא בפני בעל דין. Before we were talking about hearing testimony of witnesses, which is a whole prolonged process. You have to take each witness separately and ask them questions, and then see if that matches up, and we have to give them warnings and all that. But here we're talking about if you already have a document signed. And now we just want to ratify the document, right? I want to make sure that the people that signed this, that's really their signatures, in case someone comes and says, no, this is a forged document. So in that case, you'd need to either find the witnesses and ask them, did you sign this? Or find someone that knows their signatures and recognizes them and says, yes, this is their signatures. Or we find another document that they signed that or is already ratified, and we can compare their signatures. Okay, so those are all ways we can ratify a document. And Rav says you don't need the other litigant there. Another way, the witnesses already came; they already signed on it. And so let's say he has an IOU, right? This guy it says IOU. This guy owes me money, and here is the document. And so now we're just ratifying, making sure that the Bet Din will accept that this document is true. So yes, you can do that without the defendant. Rabbi Yochanan says no, you need the other litigant there. Even or also for ratifying documents, maybe he has a claim. Maybe he knows for sure that it's a forgery, or know something else about the case or about the witnesses themselves or whatever. Amar le Rav Sheshet Rabbi Yosef bar Abhu as beralach ta'amed Rabbi Yochanan Amar kera v'ad bib'ala ve'lo yishmerenu Amra Torah yavo ba'al ashor v'yamod al shoro. Rav Sheshet told Rabbi Yosef bar Abhu, I will explain to you the source for Rabbi Yochanan, the pasuk regarding an ox that gores and it becomes a short mu'ad. So it says that they will testify in front of the owner of the ox, and he still doesn't secure it. So you see that the testimony has to be in front of the owner. The Torah says the owner of the ox should come and stand by his ox to hear the testimony. He has to know it's going to affect him, because if it gores again, then he's going to have to pay the full amount. So you need him there. And same thing here, we're comparing the loan document to an ox, right? If we're ratifying this loan document, then it's going to be used to collect money. So the defendant who's going to have to pay the money has a right to be there to hear out that testimony, and that way he can intervene if he has a different claim. Rava says halacha is like Rav, that you can ratify a document even without the other litigant there, and even if he's there and he's screaming in protest, no, it's a forgery, doesn't matter. We go through the process, and if we find that these are the signatories and they are correct, then that's it, it's good. So now, once they ratify it, right, if he has no claim, then we're going to make him pay right away. But if the defendant, this is the borrower who owes money, and he says, give me time, I want to bring witnesses to disqualify the document. I have witnesses, right? I just don't have them right here, and right, don't make me pay right now. I need some time. So we give him time until he can bring the witnesses, and if he comes with those witnesses, if he brings the witnesses, good. So then we'll hear what the witnesses have to say, and we'll adjudicate the case. But if he says, give me this amount of time, and that amount of time comes and goes, and he never showed up, so we give him 3 extra court dates: Monday, Thursday, and Monday. That's when the courts meet. And maybe he got the date wrong, maybe he's just on his way. So we give him a little bit more time, a buffer zone, to come with those witnesses. And if he still doesn't come, we write a document of ostracism. We put him in, we excommunicate him for 90 days. Why excommunicating him? Well, because he's not coming to court. He said he was going to come to court, and he didn't. So it's the same as refusing a court order. He deserves to be excommunicated. And we say, okay, this is for 90 days. We still aren't going to take the money from him. We don't seize his assets, because tilatin kame'ela nachtinan lenichse damar katarach bezuze v'nezof metziana mela nachtinan lenichse damar dima la ashkach lemezaf bekatarach umzaben batrae na mela nachtinan lenichse damar lokech kufe katarach bezuze. So we're not going to seize his assets right away, because we say for the first 30 days maybe he's trying to borrow from someone else. In other words, he tried to find witnesses that said this is false. He couldn't find those witnesses. All right, he's going to pay. He has to pay $1,000. He doesn't have the money. So he's going to try to borrow from someone else to pay back this. So we'll also give him 30 days. Maybe he'll come up with the money. And then we give him the middle 30 days, because maybe he realized no one will lend it to him. He can't get it. So he's going to sell some property. And so it takes some time to find a buyer for his property. And then the third group of 30 days, we say maybe he found someone to buy the property, but that person himself has to go get a mortgage, has to get the money together. And so we assume that it could be in good faith. He's still trying to come up with the money to pay him, so we give him that grace period. Lo ata, but if he still doesn't come, even after that 90 days, katbinat ad rachta anichse, then we write a document of authorization that the creditor, you can go and take his property. And then all this above that we wait and wait is if he says, I'm coming. But if he doesn't, if he says, no, I'm not coming, he refuses to come to the court at all, he doesn't make a claim that I have witnesses, he doesn't make a claim about anything, right? He just says, no, I'm not coming, I'm not paying you. Then we don't wait the 90 days. We give him a document of authorization immediately. Oh, your document, your IOU is affirmed, is ratified. He owes you. He refuses to pay. Okay, go and take his assets. And now, which we say that you give him 90 days to go and get the money together, that's only if it's a case of a loan. But if it's a case of a deposit of an item, right? I lent someone my cow. Now it's time is up. I want my cow back. Thank you for watching it for me. So then he has to come up with the cow. He's supposed to have it immediately. If he doesn't have the cow, and he says, oh, give me 90 days to find the cow. No, you have to have it right now. A loan is different. What if I give you $1,000, then I assume that you're going to use the $1,000. That's what a loan is for. You're not going to have the original ones that I gave you. And so now, you need to, when you return it, you have some time to go collect the money together. That makes sense. But the item itself, I can go and seize your assets immediately if you don't have the item that I gave you. When the court writes a document of seizure, that means that the creditor can seize the borrower's land, only for land, but not movable items. Why? Because maybe the creditor will go and says, oh, you didn't pay me, I'm going to seize your cow. And maybe then they'll say, oh, what a nice cow, I think I'll have it for dinner. And the creditor eats that cow or whatever movable item it is. And then when the borrower comes, and he in fact does have witnesses, maybe he'll find the witnesses later. He couldn't find them right away. And the witnesses will say, actually, the loan document that you produced in the first place was invalid. And so I want the money back, whatever you seized. So if he seized a cow, he won't be able to take it back because the cow is gone. But if it's land doesn't go anywhere. You can't steal land. You can't hide it. And so then he says, listen, you took my land because of this loan document, but I just proved that the loan document is no good. Now I get my land back. So that's why land can be taken, seized, but not movable items. On the other hand, if the creditor has land, right? The lender has land. Then you can write a document of seizure even for the borrower's movable items, because if the lender seizes the cow of the borrower and eats it, and it turns out that the loan document is proven false, well, since the lender has land himself, the borrower can always come and say, listen, I was right all along. You took my cow illegally, so I'm going to take your land as repayment for what you should not have taken from me. So there's still a guarantee, so that's okay. However, the Gemara itself says we don't follow this last line. We in fact only write a document of seizure on land and not on movable items at all, even if the lender has land, because we're concerned maybe he has land now that's worth a lot, but maybe it will go down in price and it won't be enough to cover the amount of the cow that the lender seized. Before the court writes a document of authorization, we inform the other party that we are writing such a thing, a document. That way that he knows that listen, we're going to seize your property. And that way, and just in case, maybe he can do something last minute to pay or stop it. So we have to let him know. But that's only if he lives close by. If the person, the borrower who's supposed to pay, lives far away, we're not going to wait and go through the trouble of sending a messenger all the way to him. It may take a long time. By the time he comes back, and okay, we told him. So we don't have to, we're not going to make the creditor wait all that time. But as an exception to this rule, if the lender, the borrower, lives far away, but he has relatives, and the relatives, we presume that they're in touch and they'll go back and forth and they write letters, or if there's a caravan that goes on that route, and they always come back and they're on a schedule, then we'll wait up to 12 months. Which is a year, for them to go there 6 months, come back to let him know that, listen, we have a ratified document and you owe money, and we're writing a document of authorization to seize your land. Then we do, since we know for sure that as long as you wait 1 year, we'll get it. He'll get the message. So then we allow that. We wait. And in fact, there was actually a case where Ravina delayed writing a document of seizure 12 months, because he waited till a messenger went with the caravan there all the way to Be'er Hozai, and he was far away, and they came back and it says, yes, we told him, and he had nothing to say. So then you can write a document of authorization to take his land. Velohi, but even though the Gemara just said that, this is 2 layers of anonymous statements here, even though we just said that you should wait 12 months if there's caravans that go, but that we don't in fact follow that opinion. Hatam inish alima hava. In that case, where Ravina, they were talking about where the creditor was a thug or a strong man. And if once you gave him a document of seizure, then it would not be possible to ever get the money back from him, even if the borrower was able to bring witnesses and proof that he was in the right and he didn't have to pay all along. So that's why we had said, hold on, this guy, once you give him the money, you'll never be able to give him the land. You'll never be able to get him back, even if he's wrong. So you know what? Let's wait a while and make sure, send the message, even though it'll take another year. But that was an exceptional case where there was no recourse to be able to get it back just in case. But in a regular case, we do not wait that long. Rather, we only wait if we can send a messenger to the borrower on Tuesday, and he could go. He could get there on Wednesday, and he could go there on Tuesday. He could come back on Wednesday and let us know, and then we could bring the matter to trial on Thursday. That's it. If he's 1 day away, and we can go back and forth over 2 days, fine. We'll wait that long from a Monday to a Thursday, but to give him a chance so that he knows about it in case he has any defense or witnesses. But longer than that, we don't wait. And we're not going to wait because the creditor has a right to collect what's his. He has a ratified document, and should it be just in case that the borrower in fact has witnesses himself that he never owed, so fine, he'll bring the witnesses later, and we can always go back to that land and say, oh, you know what, he didn't have to, you were not authorized to seize the land, and then he'll have to give it back, and everybody will have what's coming to them. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen ve'amen.